They said I didn't belong. Not with these people. Not in this place. Not holding that weapon. But one perfect shot changed everything. This is the story of how I, a widowed accountant with nothing but a promise and a Glock, walked into America's most elite shooting club and brought the house down. You'll hear how I was laughed at, challenged, sabotaged, how the golden boy of the sport bet $50,000, 0 cents, that I couldn't shoot straight, and how, in front of a room full of doubters, I aimed for something far more than a target. Stick with me, 'cause this isn't just a story about marksmanship. It's about pride. It's about grief. It's about justice. And it's about what happens when the quiet ones finally speak with firepower. I remember the click of the glass doors when I first stepped inside. Everything smelled like leather and money. Designer range bags, monogrammed ear protection, polished walnut gun racks. It was the kind of place where even the coffee had a membership tier. And me? I stood there in my Target jeans, clutching an old leather purse and a folded day pass that already had a coffee stain on the corner. I looked like someone's nervous aunt who got lost on her way to book club. The receptionist barely looked up, blonde, polished, and just bored enough to be cruel. "Members only," she said, not unkindly, just dismissively. I smiled the way military spouses do when we're talked over or looked through. Calm, polite. "I have a guest pass," I said, unfolding the paper like it was proof I existed. It was a gift. She paused, scanning it like it might bite her. Behind me I could feel the stares, the snickers, the judgment dripping off every pearl-buttered polo in the room. That's when he noticed me. Blake Radcliffe. Olympic gold medalist, national champion, the poster child for Remington's elite line. His smirk hit me before his words did. "Well, well," he said, loud enough for the room to turn. "Looks like someone took a wrong turn on the way to Walmart." Laughter. Polite. Practiced. Cruel. I didn't answer. I just walked toward the basic range, my eyes locked on the scuffed floor tiles. But that was the moment they decided who I was, without knowing anything about me. And it was also the moment I decided. Let them laugh. I'll answer in caliber. I had barely set my bag down at the far end of the basic range when I heard it. $10 says she can't hit the target, someone chuckled from behind me. Then came the voice that oozed privilege like cologne. Make it 10,000. I didn't have to turn around. I already knew it was Blake. The man's ego practically had its own zip code. He sauntered over with that too-mooth, too-loud charm, the kind that smells like money and sounds like mansplaining. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said with a condescending smile. "You sure you're in the right place? This ain't a knitting circle." I took a slow breath, just like Nathan had taught me. Control the breath, control the moment. "I'm just here to practice," I replied. Quiet, even. Blake gave a theatrical look around, making sure his audience was watching. They were. "Oh, she's here to practice," he announced. "That's adorable." Then he leaned in, voice low enough to sound private but loud enough to carry. "How about we make things interesting? $10,000, 0 cents says you can't hit the bullseye from 50 yards. Now let's pause right there. If you've ever had someone underestimate you so hard it was almost funny, type "been there" in the comments. And if you think Blake's in for a surprise, smash that like button so the algorithm knows we're just getting started. And hey, if stories about underdogs rising up are your thing, subscribe for more, because this ride is about to get wilder. Anyway, back to our charming gentleman. I looked at him, then at the others, all watching, waiting. I thought of Nathan, of the years he spent making sure I could stand on my own 2 feet, no matter who or what was in front of me. "I don't have that kind of money," I said. Blake's smile widened. "No worries, sweetheart. If you win, I pay. If you lose, you walk out. No harm, no foul. Deal?" Behind him, I noticed a woman in a red blazer approaching. Rebecca Johnson, the range manager. Former competitive shooter, the only person in that building whose eyes didn't say, "You don't belong." "Mr. Radcliffe," she said carefully, "perhaps we should let our guest warm up first." He waved her off without even turning. "We're just having a friendly wager, Rebecca. Don't worry. I'll cover her Uber ride home." I should have walked away, I really should have. But there was something in his voice that rubbed me raw. Not just arrogance, entitlement, and underneath all that bluster, fear. Fear of being challenged, fear of being upstaged by someone who wasn't wearing designer earplugs or carrying a $10,000 0 cents custom rifle. I glanced at my left hand, the simple gold band still there. I twisted it once, just like I used to when Nathan was deployed. A small reminder that I wasn't alone. "All right," I said. "Let's do it." You could feel the energy shift. Blake's brows shot up, then that cocky smirk returned. "Excellent," he said. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've got ourselves a show." What he didn't realize was he'd just signed up for one too, because I wasn't here for the money. I was here for something a whole lot heavier than cash. I was here to keep a promise. As I stepped into position, something in me clicked into place. The noise faded, the crowd disappeared. It was just me, the Glock, and the target. Next up, one shot, one decision, and a moment that would shake the entire room. Let's talk about what happened when I pulled that trigger. They say the moment before the shot is quieter than the shot itself. I never understood that until now. Standing there at the far end of the range with Blake Radcliffe and his designer fan club behind me, the world just faded. No more snickers. No more rich boy smirks. Just me, my Glock 19, and 50 yards of still air. You want to know the truth? My hands weren't shaking. Because this wasn't my first time behind a trigger. Not really. It had been 3 years, 3 whole years since I'd touched a firearm. But some things don't leave you. Like how Nathan used to rest his hand on my back, not to correct me, just to remind me he was there. "Low grip, firm stance, breathe like you mean it," he'd say. "Control the shot, or the shot controls you." So I took one breath, then another, lined up the sights, held steady, and when I exhaled I squeezed the trigger like it was a whisper I'd been holding in since the funeral. Crack. The shot rang out, sharp, clean, perfect. The kind of sound that makes people stop talking mid-laugh. The motor whirred as the target reeled back. Each click of that machine felt like a drum beat straight to my chest. Blake tried to keep his poker face, but his jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed. He knew. Even before the target got back to us, he knew. When it arrived. Dead center. Bullseye, not even grazing the line. The silence that followed was deafening. For a full 2 seconds you could hear nothing but air. Then came the coughing. The awkward shuffle. The I was totally joking laughs from the peanut gallery. Blake grabbed the target like it had personally insulted him. Held it up to the light, squinting like maybe the hole would magically move. "Beginner's luck," he said, voice a little too tight. I didn't say anything. I just placed the Glock down gently, zipped my range bag, and looked him in the eye. That's when Rebecca, the range manager, stepped forward. "That was an exceptional shot," she said. Her voice wasn't fake flattering like the others. It was honest, earnest, professional admiration. "Miss?" she prompted. "Miller," I said. "Emma Miller." She gave me a small nod, like a silent handshake between equals. "Perhaps you'd like to try our advanced range next time. Clearly you're not a beginner." Before I could answer, Blake cut in. "Hold on," he said, forcing a smile that looked like it hurt. "Lucky shot doesn't make her Annie Oakley. Let's see if she can do it again, with real stakes this time." The crowd perked up. The scent of money and male ego thickened. Blake pulled out his checkbook like he was swiping a sword. $50,000, he declared. "If you can hit 3 bullseyes in a row at 75 yards, I'll write the check on the spot. If you miss even one, you admit you cheated and walk away for good." Someone in the crowd gasped. A woman near the back muttered, "This is getting ugly." She wasn't wrong. But ugly or not, something had shifted inside me. This wasn't about money anymore, or even pride. It was about everyone who's ever been laughed at, shut down, told to stay in their lane. It was about keeping a promise to a man who taught me how to stand tall even when the world tried to make me feel small. "I'll take your challenge," I said, "but on one condition. If I win, the money goes to the Veterans Support Foundation." There it was, a line in the sand, drawn in gunpowder and principle. Blake hesitated, but only for a second. Then that crooked smile returned. "Fine, it's not like you'll win anyway." As I walked back to my bench, I caught Rebecca watching me. Not with doubt, but with something else. Respect? Worry? Maybe both. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel like I was carrying Nathan's legacy alone. Coming up next, 3 shots, 1 target, and a crowd about to witness what a promise truly looks like under pressure. Stay with me, because the next part? That's when things got real. People always assume Nathan taught me to shoot because he was worried about my safety. And yeah, sure, that was part of it. Being married to a Navy SEAL meant learning to live with uncertainty, with long silences, with shadows in the corner of your bedroom that weren't always imagined. But that wasn't the whole story. He taught me because he respected me. Because deep down he knew I had it in me. Not just the skill, but the mindset. The stillness. It started small. He came home from a mission once, knee wrapped, scar under his collarbone, and he said, "If I'm going to be gone so much, I want to know you can protect yourself." The first time we went to a range, I thought I was just humoring him. I wore earbuds, sneakers, and brought trail mix, like a picnic. He laughed at me. I rolled my eyes. But when he handed me that Glock and adjusted my hands, my stance, something clicked. The world got quieter, and I got louder, on the inside. That first bullseye, it didn't cheer, didn't high-five. He just leaned in and whispered, "You've got it." Steady hands, sharp eyes, and the rarest thing, calm under pressure. After that, it became our thing. Between deployments, we'd go out to the range. Rain or shine, just the 2 of us. Sometimes he'd coach, sometimes he'd just watch. Sometimes he'd say nothing at all, but when he did speak, it always landed. Shooting's not about aggression, Em. It's about control, total control, of your body, your breathing, your fear. And I listened, because with Nathan every word mattered. He wasn't a man who wasted them. His teammates called him the Ghost because no one saw him coming, and when he hit, it was already over. They said he could split a playing card from 800 yards in wind. But the greatest thing he ever hit was my heart. We got married in a courthouse ceremony. No dress, no DJ, just us, 2 witnesses and his best friend Michael, pretending he knew how to take a photo without his thumb in the frame. We didn't have time for fancy. Because with SEAL life, you never knew when you'd get the next chance. One day, just 2 days before his last deployment, we went shooting like always. But he didn't bring his rifle. He just brought a notebook and a pen. He watched me shoot, didn't say a word for 30 minutes. Then, when I sat down beside him, he looked at me and said, "Promise me you'll keep practicing, even if I'm not around." I laughed. "Don't talk like that," I told him. But he didn't laugh back, just squeezed my hand and nodded. That was the last time I ever saw him on American soil. The funeral was everything you'd imagine. The flag, the rifle salute, the unbearable silence between the gunshots. I didn't shoot again after that. I couldn't. I packed away the Glock, locked it up beside his medals. Tried to move on, tried to forget the part of me that knew how to be still. Until that day at the Elite Shooters Club. Until that bet. Until something inside me, something he had lit, ignited again. And so there I was, 3 years later, standing at the line, $50,000, 0 cents on the table, Blake Radcliffe grinning like the king of a castle he didn't build. But May, I wasn't just holding a gun. I was holding every lesson Nathan ever gave me, and a promise I wasn't about to break. Coming up, 3 shots, 75 yards. One silent salute to the man who taught me everything. Don't blink. You'll want to see every inch of what happened next. You could hear a pin drop when I stepped up to the 75-yard line. Not because people cared about me, but because Blake Radcliffe had just wagered $50,000 and his golden boy reputation that I'd miss even one shot. One miss, I walk away labeled a cheater. 3 hits, and the room would never look at me the same again. Funny how sometimes the air gets heavier, not colder, when people don't want you to win. Rebecca, the range manager, gave me a tiny nod from across the floor. That woman didn't say much, but her eyes? They told me she was rooting for me. Quietly, professionally, the way women who've had to stay composed their whole lives root for each other. I loaded the Glock slowly, methodically. Blake stood off to the side, arms crossed, smug as ever. His crew behind him was whispering, probably already brainstorming excuses for why I got lucky the first time. The truth? There's no luck in breathing, rule trick in steadiness, and no cheat code for muscle memory born from grief and loyalty. I took my stance, just like Nathan showed me. Feet shoulder-width apart. Back straight, chin up, and still, but ready. I looked down the barrel and I swear, for a second, I wasn't in that club. I was back at that gravel range in Virginia, with the late afternoon sun on my neck and Nathan standing behind me whispering, "Let your body remember what your brain might forget under pressure." So I did. First shot. Crack. The sound echoed like a gavel in a courtroom. Target rolled back. Bullseye. There was an audible shift in the room. No one was laughing now. Blake's smirk twitched. Just a hair, but enough to see it. Second shot. This time I adjusted slightly. There was a weird flicker in the overhead lights, and I could feel a draft near my left side. Nothing major, but when you've trained with someone like Nathan, you learn to adapt fast. Target rolled back again. Another bullseye. Now even the people who had been pretending not to watch were leaning forward. I didn't turn to see Blake, but I could feel him fuming. By now it wasn't about the money anymore. This was pride. This was hierarchy. This was a room built on the assumption that skill only lives where wealth pays to grow. And here I was, a widow in department store jeans, rewriting the narrative. Third shot. I reached up and twisted my wedding ring once, just like always. I could almost hear Nathan whispering, "Breathe out halfway, and don't chase the shot, let it find you." I fired. This one felt different, and exhaling a chapter of my life. The target rolled back, slower this time. Or maybe that was just how my brain was processing the weight of the moment. When it stopped. Dead center, again. 3 for 3. A perfect set. And for the second time that day, the entire room fell silent. No applause. Not yet. Just stunned silence, the kind you hear after someone says something true, and everyone needs a second to absorb it. Then someone clapped. Then another. And then it was a wave, applause, whistles. A woman near the back even wiped her eyes. I turned to Blake. He was pale, holding his checkbook like it had betrayed him personally. "That's impossible," he muttered. "Nobody walks in off the street and shoots like that." Rebecca stepped forward again, but this time she wasn't just a manager. She was a witness. "That was clean," she said. "Verified, no assistants, no tricks, just one hell of a performance." Blake wasn't done. Anyone can get lucky once. But that was staged. Something's off. I kept my voice calm. "We had a deal, $50,000, to the Veteran Support Foundation." His lip curled like the word veterans physically offended him. "I don't pay cheaters," he hissed. "You think this proves something?" Rebecca turned to him sternly. "Mr. Radcliffe, you made a public wager, and you lost. Honor it." He stepped toward her, finger raised. "Know your place, Rebecca. I own this club." Her face didn't flinch. But mine did. Because I'd heard that tone before, directed at waitresses, secretaries, wives. always from men who confused money for merit. And in that moment I realized this was never really about shooting. It was about value. Who gets to have it? Who gets to assign it? And who's allowed to redefine it? So when Blake snarled that it wasn't over, I didn't flinch. Because it wasn't just about targets anymore. It was about truth. And the war had only just begun. Coming up next, Blake doubles down, raises the stakes. And I find myself facing not just one man's ego, but an entire system built to keep people like me in the shadows. Stick around, because what he tried to do next, let's just say, it was far from sportsmanlike. I thought that would be the end of it. 3 shots, 3 bullseyes, a packed room, a shaken champion, a checkbook he couldn't bring himself to open. But apparently for Blake Radcliffe, losing a bet wasn't just a bruise. It was an existential crisis. By the time I got home that night, the whispers had already started. A blurry video of my 3rd shot was on social media, zoomed in, over-filtered, and captioned with, "Who is this woman?" It had 80,000 views before I even kicked off my shoes. I tried to ignore it. I brewed chamomile tea, put my phone on silent, lit a candle. But my inbox didn't get the memo. The next morning I woke up to 17 messages. 3 from Michael Reeves, 2 from unknown numbers, and 1 very polite voicemail from a producer at a daytime talk show, all asking the same question. Where did you learn to shoot like that? I didn't respond, because honestly, I hadn't figured out if I wanted to disappear again or finally step into the light. But Blake had made up his mind for both of us. See, while I was trying to finish a spreadsheet at work, acting like I hadn't just publicly humiliated a shooting legend, Blake was making phone calls. Alive them, to private investigators, to club board members, to his father's connections at a few less than reputable information services. He wasn't looking for closure. He was hunting for dirt. Apparently it wasn't enough that I beat him. He needed to prove I shouldn't have been able to. Because if a quiet woman in jeans could walk in and outperform him, what did that say about everything he built his brand on? By Thursday, Blake's crisis team had a full Emma Miller profile on his desk. Age, 35. Occupation, senior accountant, Meridian Financial. Moved from Virginia Beach 3 years ago. No criminal record. No official competition history. Translation? I was boring, which only made me more suspicious in Blake's eyes. He called his investigator again. There's something missing, he snapped. No one shoots like that out of nowhere. Dig deeper. Virginia Beach, wedding records, anything. Meanwhile, I was just trying to live my life. Emphasis on trying. That night, I got a call from Rebecca Johnson. Her voice was tight, professional but uneasy. Miss Miller, I probably shouldn't be calling, but you should know, Blake has people looking into your background. I exhaled slowly. Thanks for the heads up, I said, but there's nothing to find. She paused. You sure about that? I didn't answer. Because truth is there was something to find. Not something shameful, but something private. Something sacred. Nathan? His name wasn't in any of the news articles about me. No press had connected the dots yet. But Blake's team was getting close. And when they did, that would change the story. No longer unknown woman beats Olympic champion, but widow of elite military sniper steps into the spotlight. It would go from curiosity to symbol. And honestly, that scared me more than any shot I'd ever taken. So I did what I always did when life started closing in. I went back to the range. Not the fancy club this time. A public, dusty, no-frills range 2 counties over. And for the next 8 hours. I trained, not to impress, not to prove, but to remember who I was. Coming up next, I open a box I haven't touched in years. A piece of Nathan's legacy. And a call I never expected, from a man who once served beside the ghost. The past was knocking, and this time I was ready to answer. I hadn't touched a long-range rifle in years. Handguns? Sure. To those were Nathan's comfort zone. Mine too. But the Macmillan TAC 338? That thing was a beast. Elegant, deadly, unforgiving. Exactly the kind of weapon Blake Radcliffe had been born to master. And just my luck, he'd gotten the club to approve it as the final station. Weighted heavily in scoring. His signature move, his territory, his home turf. They say when the house rigs the table you walk away. But I wasn't built for walking away. So the day after Rebecca's warning call, I opened the one box I'd sworn I'd never open again. Nathan's gearbox. The scent of gun oil and cedar hit me like a wave. It smelled like security. Like Saturday mornings on the back range. Those like him. Under the folded American flag and 3 challenge coins was his notebook. The one with all the distance calculations, windrift formulas, ballistics notes. And on one page in his neat, blocky handwriting, Emma, more than 75 yards, 10/10 Coaston Plate. Actions negotiated crucially. Mary, HP tremendous. Captain safety team, it's so bad. Ghost potential. I stared at that line for a long time. Ghost potential. You wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a dare. The next morning I called in sick. First time in 3 years. Instead of heading to the office, I drove out past the edge of the city to a private range that catered to, let's say, quiet professionals. I rented time with a TAC 338. The kick was harder than I remembered. The scope felt like staring through a telescope during an earthquake. But muscle memory started to return. And then, out of nowhere, I heard it. A little heavy on your right elbow. I turned. A tall man in a fleece jacket stood beside a black SUV with government plates. He wasn't holding a weapon, but the way he moved told me he didn't need to. "Mrs. Miller," he said, offering a nod. "Commander Wilson, Team 3, served with Nathan in Baghdad 16. I squinted. "Nathan never mentioned you." His voice softened but didn't lose its edge. We weren't in the same squad, but in the teams the ghost's name traveled fast. He walked toward the bench, eyes on the TAC 3038. "Heard you might need a hand learning that thing. I know the platform." I hesitated. My instincts said no, but my heart whispered yes. So we trained. For 4 hours straight, Wilson put me through the ringer. He corrected my posture, my cheek weld, my wind calls, and between every round, he shared small pieces of Nathan I didn't know I was missing. He never bragged, you know, but he talked about you, how fast you learned. Said you had the calmest hands of any civilian he'd seen. At one point, Wilson handed me a laminated sheet. Nathan's range data, converted into cheat sheet form. "You earned this," he said. "Nathan built it for himself. But he always said if anyone was going to inherit it, it'd be you." I didn't cry. Not then. But something settled in my chest. Something solid. By late afternoon, my groupings were tight. My corrections automatic. Wilson packed up his gear, but before he left, he looked me in the eye and said, "We lose brothers, but we don't forget their people. You're not alone out there. Not tomorrow. Not ever." And just like that, he was gone. Didn't ask for thanks. Didn't pose for pictures. Just showed up, gave what he could, and vanished into the shadows again. I guess that's what brotherhood looks like when it's real. The next morning I woke up before dawn. Slept in my training clothes, packed light, just Nathan's notebook, my range gloves, and a silent promise. I wasn't going to win for pride. I was going to win for everyone who was told they don't belong. Coming up, the final showdown. 10 stations. 1 rigged system. 1 woman. With ghost blood and nothing left to fear. Stay with me, because Blake's downfall didn't start with a rifle. It started with doubt. The elite shooters club had never seen a crowd like this. Normally it was all quiet nods and suppressed yawns over lattes with imported milk. But that morning, there were camera crews, veterans in folding chairs, Teenagers with phones. Old-timers polishing their hearing aids just to catch every word. It felt more like a courtroom than a competition. At the front gate, a banner read, Radcliffe vs. Miller, 10 weapons, 1 champion. But for me it wasn't about the title. It was about something much simpler. Honor the promise, stay calm, stay sharp, finish this. Rebecca met me at the check-in table. Her clipboard was shaking, though I couldn't tell if it was from nerves or rage. She leaned in. I did a final walkthrough of the stations this morning. Emma, they're rigged, she explained fast. Different scopes than standard issue. Trigger tension altered on 2 rifles, sights misaligned by millimeters. Nothing illegal, just barely out of spec. Enough to throw off someone unfamiliar. Enough to give Blake the edge. I smiled. Not out of confidence. Out of clarity. I'll adapt. Rebecca blinked. You're really not afraid, are you? I shrugged. I buried fear with my husband. The first 5 stations were all performance. Speed, accuracy, transitions. Blake moved like a machine. He'd done this choreography for years. I was slower, deliberate, but my hits landed. Even when the triggers pulled heavy or the scopes were fuzzy, I adjusted. Adapt and overcome, just like Nathan drilled into me. By station 6, the crowd had shifted. No longer amused spectators. Now they were leaning in. Whispers. She's holding even. Did you see that group? That's ghost work. At station 8, I caught sight of Michael Reeves in the back row, arms crossed, nodding slow, like a man who'd just seen a legend reborn. By station 9, we were tied. That's when Blake broke the silence. He approached me, all casual charm wrapped around a steel blade. Impressive work, Mrs. Miller. Ghost would be proud. Shame he's not here to see you lose. I froze. Just for a second. He used Nathan's call sign. A dirty move. A final needle. I stared him down. You know, Blake, he used to say, there's nothing more dangerous than a man who needs to win. But I think he was wrong. There's one thing more dangerous. A woman who's got nothing left to prove and nothing left to lose. Station 10. The Macmillan TAC 338. The rifle Blake knew like his own shadow. And yup, Rebecca was right. The scope was shifted. The stock slightly off balance. The whole thing felt wrong. Blake went first. He fired with speed and swagger, 10 shots in less than 2 minutes. His grouping was tight, 9 of 10 in the innermost ring. It was good. Textbook. And he knew it. He stood beside the target like a politician at a podium, soaking in applause before it even started. Then it was my turn. I stepped up, placed Nathan's notebook beside me, twisted my ring once, and everything went still. It wasn't nerves. It was reverence. The weight of every silent promise. Every morning alone, every training session, every laugh we never got to share. I took a breath, aimed, rack, 1 hit, rec, 2, 3. I adjusted on shot 4, felt the wind shift. Recalculated using Nathan's notes. Shot 5, dead center. By the time I got to shot 9, the room had changed. People weren't blinking, weren't breathing. Even Blake stopped pacing. Shot 10. Just as I pulled the trigger, a flash of light bounced across my line of sight. Deliberate. Someone in Blake's circle held up a reflective badge, trying to distract me. Dirty trick. Real petty. I paused, but didn't flinch. Shifted 2 millimeters to the left. He set my breath, and pulled. The final round flew silent. The impact? Bullseye. The crowd erupted like someone had just won the Super Bowl, the lottery, and a moral victory all in one. Rebecca raised the final scores. Emma Miller, first place. Blake Radcliffe, second. Blake approached me for the handshake, teeth clenched, ego shattered. This isn't over, he hissed. I met his eyes, calm. For today it is. And Blake, You owe $50,000 to the Veterans Support Foundation. He looked like someone who just realized his kingdom had no walls left. But what he didn't realize, this wasn't just a loss. It was a reckoning. Because as he stormed off, Rebecca was already pulling up the footage. The footage that would prove just how deep the sabotage went. Coming up, the exposure, the fallout, and how one final act of pettiness turned into Blake Radcliffe's public undoing. Don't go anywhere. The best justice stories always end in truth. Blake was already halfway to the locker room when Rebecca called out, "Mr. Radcliffe, I wouldn't leave just yet." She wasn't shouting. But somehow every word landed like a dropped gavel in a silent courtroom. The crowd froze. He turned. And that's when she held up the tablet. "Before we wrap today's competition," she said calmly, "I'd like to share a piece of footage from our security system." The big screen lit up behind her. It wasn't me shooting. It wasn't Blake posing. It was his technician, caught on a time-stamped camera tinkering with the rifle assigned to me, adjusting the scope, replacing the optic mount, altering trigger tension. Blake's signature station. His custom gear. Rigged. But not in his favor. Rebecca didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She simply turned to the judges' panel and said, "We record all range access logs for safety and fairness. What you see here occurred 40 minutes before the event. No authorization, no oversight. And not by Miss Miller." Gasps. Actual gasps. Not the theatrical kind. The real kind, when people realize they've been clapping for the wrong champion for years. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. The silence that followed was louder than any speech I could have given. Blake's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His girlfriend Jessica stood frozen behind him, phone halfway raised, like she couldn't decide whether to film it or just faint. One of the judges stood. "Effective immediately, Mr. Radcliffe, you are suspended pending investigation. Your results today are nullified. Your past titles will be reviewed." Blake took a step forward, maybe to protest, maybe to lunge, but two uniformed officers were already moving toward him. "Mr. Radcliffe, Boston PD," one of them said. "We have a few questions regarding fraud, tampering, and unreported wagers exceeding the legal limit." "Yeah. Turns out when you bet 50 grand in a public club, that's not just poor sportsmanship. It's illegal gambling. And the footage? That wasn't just evidence for the club board. It was probable cause. By Monday morning, clips of Blake's meltdown were everywhere. TikTok, Reddit, morning shows. Someone even set it to music. Another One Bites the Dust was trending with the tag King Falls Flat. And me? I stayed off the internet. I had no press team, no PR spin, no comeback tour. Just tea. A porch. And a single call to Michael Reeves. "It's gotten bigger than I expected," I told him. "What do I do now?" He laughed, one of those deep, tired laughs that only come from men who've seen too much and still love the world anyway. "That depends. Do you want privacy or justice?" I didn't answer right away, because I already knew. Blake hadn't paid the donation. He'd tried to erase the loss with sabotage. He didn't just disrespect the competition. He disrespected the charity, the veterans. So I took a deep breath. Then we pressed charges. A week later, I found myself sitting across from Colonel James Harrison, director of the Veterans Support Foundation. Retired Marine, 2 Purple Hearts, eyes that missed nothing. He shook my hand like we'd already known each other for years. "Miss Miller," he said, "several of our board members were present at the competition. What you did mattered." He told me about how they'd begun internal proceedings to revoke Blake's championship records, how his sponsors were dropping him, how manufacturers were now offering to fund veteran-led programs in his place. And then he pulled out a folder. "We've been developing a therapeutic marksmanship program for veterans struggling with reintegration, teaching control, focus, discipline. We want you to help lead it." I blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you." he said. "You're proof that skill doesn't always wear a uniform, but sometimes it still carries the mission." I didn't answer right away. What in my chest? That quiet stillness again. Not fear, not even pride. Just purpose. And that's how I went from a woman holding her breath in grief to someone finally breathing again, this time with aim. Coming up next, the legacy Nathan left behind, the program we built, and the young veterans who would carry it forward, bullseye by bullseye. Because this wasn't just a story of downfall. It was a beginning. And I had one last promise to keep. 2 weeks after the competition, I stood in front of 6 folding chairs. 6 veterans. Some wore baseball caps from different branches. Some had sleeves pulled down to hide the scars. All of them carried something heavy that didn't show on paper. I introduced myself the same way Nathan once introduced himself to me. I'm not here to teach you how to shoot. I'm here to remind you that stillness is strength. They looked at me skeptically. One guy in the back raised his brow and said, "Aren't you the lady who made that rich dude cry on live stream?" And to explore. Guilty. That broke the ice. From there we built something that wasn't just about guns or bullseyes. It was about control, about quiet confidence, about channeling the chaos into something steady. We called the program The Ghost Line, in honor of Nathan, in honor of the nickname he never asked for but always lived up to. And then, something beautiful happened. One of our shooters, Staff Sergeant Tyler Graves, who hadn't left his apartment for over a year since his discharge, stood up in front of a crowd at a local fundraiser and said, "This program didn't save me. It reminded me I could save myself." That night, the Veterans Support Foundation announced a new scholarship, the Nathan Ghost Miller Excellence in Marksmanship Award. I wasn't ready for how hard that hit. They called me to the stage. I walked up, twisted my wedding ring once, and took the mic. A year ago, I was invisible. Not just to the world, but to myself. I walked into a club that wasn't built for people like me, and left knowing exactly who I was. This isn't about beating a champion, it's about honoring one. The one who never made headlines, the one who trained me not just to shoot, but to stand my ground. I looked out into that crowd. Senators, sponsors, veterans, and a few wide-eyed daughters holding hands with their moms. For a moment, it felt like Nathan was there, just outside the spotlight. Arms crossed, silent, proud. Nowadays, I still get emails about the competition. They'll get tagged in memes. Still hear Blake Radcliffe's name whenever someone wants to talk about how fast it can all fall apart. But that's not the story I tell. I tell people about Tyler, about Rebecca Johnson, who kept her job and now oversees ethics for the whole club, about Commander Wilson, who drops by every once in a while and says things like, "Your elbow's still a little lazy." I tell them about how grief doesn't always leave you. But purpose? Purpose gives it somewhere to go. So if you're still watching, thank you. Not just for sticking with my story, but for believing that sometimes the quiet ones were just waiting for the right moment to be heard. And if you've ever been overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated, remember this. You don't have to shout to make an impact. Sometimes all it takes is one perfect shot. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of someone you love, or someone you used to be, leave a comment. Share it with a friend who needs a little fire in their lungs again. And don't forget to subscribe, because this isn't the end of the line. It's just the next round.